Okay, he said he wants to brief us. He said he wants to brief us. How are you, Rodney? All right, okay. Are we ready? Yeah. We ready?
They are gonna do this. It's just what I. We turn on back and this is the right one. No, they need to come out of pieces. He needs to call them back.
Hold on a minute. You have one?
Oh,
in your
okay.
car?
Okay. Mayor, you don't need a vote to come back.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Just call it
I
back.
just call it, okay. So who do we have online?
Justin, Dee Dee, and Dennis Tim.
Okay, so we have a quorum right now.
Yeah.
We're gonna call the meeting back to order. Good evening, everyone. The time is 6:04. We convene this meeting. The time is 6:04. It's Tuesday and Monday, July 24th. We convene this meeting of the Board of Finance for the Espanola, City of Espanola. I don't have an agenda before me, but I guess we'll let Ms. McCure proceed forward. Can counselors that are in Zoom world hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
I didn't hear Counselor Salazar Torres.
yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right, so all three of them, let the record reflect that all three have acknowledged that they can hear us.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members and staff. My name is Guadalupe McCure, Comptroller for the City of Espanola.
Guadalupe, can you move the mic over and make sure that the light's on?
Yes, sir, it's on.
Okay.
This is a continuation. And Mr. Rodney will be going next, and then Ms. Baxter will do a recap summary of the report, the departments that are left. So it should be a quick and easy to finish this off for tomorrow's meeting and any recommendations so we can get it, the final before the council tomorrow.
Ms. Garcia, let the record reflect. Counselor Benavides has joined us. So we have 3 counselors on Zoom and we have 4 counselors in chambers tonight. Mrs. McCure, you may proceed forward.
Rodney will come up right now. and-
Okay, so we're gonna have wastewater, Mr. Rodney Alcott. Excuse me, I'm gonna get some water.
Ms. McClure, can I have a- can I have a spelling of Robin's last name, please? Or can you give it to me? I don't know.
Spell your last name. How do you spell your last name?
T-A-L-C-O-T-T.
Oh, Alcott, ALCOT.
E-A-L-C-O-T-T.
These are close up to this.
Don't call me Aloysius.
Whenever you're ready.
Mr. Rodney Talcott.
Good evening.
Thank you.
I want to add that hard hearing. So if I'm looking at you and
And yeah, move the microphone closer, and I want to remind the council to turn on their microphones. I talked to Ms. Martin, and she's had a hard time doing some of the people aren't doing their microphones. And I understand because of health situations and such, but please always remember to turn your microphone on.
Yeah, if I'm here, it's fine, but if I'm not here and trying to do it from YouTube, you know,
Can't hear anything at all.
it's hard with some of, a couple of the councils.
And then those that are in the Zoom world, they need to come up very close to their microphones on their tablets. Mr. Talcott, you may proceed. Wastewater.
Well. I was hoping you guys would be asking questions.
Okay, your answer, 18.
Oh.
Yes, sir.
Um, let me start out that we had two EPA visits in the last year, well, year and a half. First one was May of last year, and 2 weeks ago they paid us another surprise visit. The first one I received a report, and I have a couple of copies of this if the council wants it, or of the EPA report, and they showed that they had concerns about the infrastructure and the condition that it be in, starting through the collection systems, through the plant, and the grit chamber, which has been down for approximately estimatedly 6, maybe 8 years, and then other equipment that has been removed from the plant as well, which I intend with this budget to replace this equipment for better operations of the plant. With this second visit, they scrutinized mostly the lab, and with my lab tech, we have proposed to extend our testing through nitrification and denitrification, that will to help in-house testing to improve the quality of effluent that the product plant produces. By doing that, we would have to purchase what's called a DR 3900 Hawk testing equipment, which will allow us to better improve the quality of our water going out the plant. All in-house testing that we do does exactly just that, to make sure that the plant is operating at optimal at all times. It was mentioned in the first report, and they mentioned it again. And this visit was the grit chamber was down and needs to be replaced. Estimates of that is just for the piece of machine is about 750 grand. I did not originally plan for that to be done right away. I was looking into loan and grant monies to install that. Also, the effluent cascade was also mentioned by the EPA, and said that there was a need for improvement there as well. Reports on that have been forwarded to the EPA as well. I have photos of those systems, but other than an impending report from them, I would not concern it until we've received that report. Fuges. Replace it with what's called a fan press. I'm also looking in grant and loan monies to purchase this piece of equipment. Estimated cost for yearly maintenance for these machines is $100,000 a year. With 2 major services 1 year, with a minor service on the third, and 2 minors and a major in the next year. And that's estimated. But with the condition of the one that's been tore apart, it's estimated close to $400,000 to repair this piece of equipment. So it's on standby until I get approval for the loan to purchase the fan press. It's estimated that we will save close to $150,000 to $200,000 a year by removing this system. The estimated maintenance and electrical chemical costs for the fan press will be estimated about 10 to 20 grand a year. So the potential savings to the city will be tremendous, because we'll be using less power, less service maintenance, and less chemical overall. Also, I spoke with engineers about this project, and it's been suggested that we remove the digesting system and dewater and thicken from secondary sludge. If you have any questions about what those particular items in the plant, feel free to ask, because I'll explain it in detail exactly their potential parts and the use of the system.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Talcott? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Talcott, for the information you're providing to us.
Peg, we can't hear you at all. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you for the information that you're providing to us. Seems like there's a lot going on over there. And I'm just curious, in your budget, there's a 750,000 under contractual services. Do you know exactly what that is going to be for?
Yes, actually, we are currently already in contractual service with Sauter Mevler and Associates. Also, we'll have to re-enter contractual obligations with Bobby Garcia Trucking to continue hauling off our biosolids from the plant. I have been working on a plan to eliminate that contract by coming up with a 503 Class A sludge that will allow us to give it away to the public.
Mhm.
and to farmers as well. Just waiting for EPA and state approval on that. If we pass all those tests, which my preliminary sampling has shown that we will be able to do this. And the only thing at that point will be lacking of training of my lab techs, which I'll have to push forward as well.
Let me ask you, what is a contract for Garcia Trucking? How much is that contract for?
I don't exactly know how much that particular contract is. It varies, mostly because it depends on how much we haul. And I think we hauled an estimated close to 60,000 last year. Don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure, but it wasn't as much as I thought it was going to be. Plus, that also includes the cost of paying the landfill for taking it.
Tip fees?
She said tipping fees. Are you talking about tipping fees, switching?
Where does that go to Rio Rancho?
Right now, it's the one in Albuquerque. But I've been told there are others that will accept it, so we'll have to write a disposable management plan. Rewrite it, that is, and resubmit it with the state. And I'm required by the state and EPA to sample this before it goes to landfill, and it must be approved by all entities such as the state, the EPA, and I lost it. The EPA and the state and the landfill.
Right.
Mrs. McCure, had some questions on the natural gas utility charge, postage costs. Electric utility charge. That's typically not in a lot of the other budgets for the other departments. I know we
It
typically.
was on my budget when I reviewed it and rewrote it. And so we do have natural gas at the plant and at the lift stations.
But typically we handle utility costs for all departments. It comes out of a central administration
I
fund.
was on a,
And the natural gas is there's nothing budget there. The utilities is because of the nature of their buildings and that comes out of there so we can capture.
Because it's
that.
excess.
Yes, that's an excess. It's not just a regular building. The postage is because the billing is split between the three utilities. So we put postage in each of their funds so they could all split the utility, the postage for the utility bills.
So based on that aspect, is there individual meters for each of the natural gas situation and then the electric meters there out there? To base it per kilowatt?
converted to electric.
Well, no, just in general, there should be separate meters for each of those.
And there's 226,000 actual expense on electricity last year. So, and the natural gas is gonna be centralized, but the electricity there, I'm assuming must be meters out there because it was 226,000 in electricity.
Do you
last
know,
year.
Counselor? Okay. All right. Counselor Rodriguez.
Mr. Selpa, on vehicles, you have $134,000 proposed for FY 24. Can you explain what that's for?
Yes, the vehicles and equipment at the wastewater plant are amongst the oldest in the city. Vehicle 102 and vehicle 103 have a lot of wear and tear on it. I think they're 2013 vehicles and they're in very need of replacement. And we haven't replaced any new vehicles in quite some time, other than the Vector truck that we bought a year and a half ago.
Ms. McCure, Ms. Baxter, I understand that there was transfers made from the wastewater fund into solid waste as well that need to be repaid. Is that also reflected in this budget?
That is not, we're researching all the transfers to do it back to wastewater and to water.
Okay, because I want to be very clear that all the money that has been taken from water and wastewater obviously needs to be repaid to those funds.
And it wasn't money, it was
Well,
expense.
it was expenses that were covered from another department, but essentially there's no proof or record from a bar aspect, but it was a verbal discussion. I
And we're
understand.
looking for the actual checks, working with accounts payable. So we have the backup whenever the transfer is done, we will have the proper documentation to do that.
Because obviously the account code will reflect that, correct?
Another thought, Mayor, I really feel like it's important for us to maintain some kind of fund through the budgeting process that allows for all of these things that are very costly so that we have a little bit of a stash before we get hit with something major. Even if it's 50,000 or 100,000 a year that we're putting aside, especially in this area, because when things go bad at wastewater, they're very costly. And it's not cheap to replace stuff, so I'd like to have a little bit of a
contingency.
contingency building annually so that we have something put away for when these issues arise.
So I couldn't agree with you further, Mayor Pro Tem. Public Works is extremely critical, obviously, to the whole functions of the city, water, wastewater, and we can't forget solid waste because we don't want a crisis situation what's occurred at the authority. And so I think once Ms. McCure is able to finalize and reconcile some numbers, we're able to probably do hopefully a 90-day review and come back and look at our numbers so that we can be able to be more adequate and accurate. We're going to have to look at our reserves as well. There's some situations that are coming down the pike that we're going to have to look at. and funding those?
Some of the things I had included in my thoughts of the budget was expanding, as I said, at the lab, replacing the mixers that have been out of the plant and DO or dissolved oxygen probes so we can get real time accuracy reading of the dissolved oxygen in the aeration basins. Those are some of the smaller projects that I propose, but even though they're smaller projects, they're still fairly costly because the DO probes are like 40 grand and the mixers are close to 55 grand and upgrading the lab is going to be about, $6,000 to $10,000. Oh, and I nearly forgot. The EPA with this report that they gave us wants us to do have some form of better analysis set up for reports for the EPA. And my proposal for that was a program called Hawk Winds, where we can enter all data, and that way anybody who is tied into the program can see right hand what the report is as we produce the report on a daily basis. It will streamline our storage. In case of an EPA audit like we did, all I have to do is hit a button and it's all there. It would make. Big pardon?
What's the name of the program?
Hawk Winds. WIMS, WIMMS. There are others out that, but that's the one I'm familiar with using.
You know how much that programming costs?
Roughly about $33,000. I'd let's see if I brought it with me. No, I didn't. I do have it. I can send you the cost of all these I just mentioned individually, from the aeration basin to the lab, and all their potential projects coming up individually as is. Again, I'd like to stress the one thing, the need of the service of our centrifuges. Given today's example that I will be tearing one of the dewater centrifuge apart, and if it goes down on us, it will be quite expensive to fix. Hence, again, my proposal to remove these centrifuges to save the city money, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. In my opinion, they should never have been purchased in the first place, because they are the Cadillac of the end of the industry. They're very good, but they need Cadillac money. And unfortunately, we can't afford Cadillac. We can do with a Chevy here. It will work just fine for us. And I had one demonstrated. I have videos and pictures and cost projections of that as well. And if you are interested, I can email all that data to you as well. And
I would be interested.
okay, yes, ma'am.
I think everybody should get that information.
Yes, send it to everyone. please.
Okay, I can do that.
The replacement that you're proposing for the centrifuge is there right now. What type of a centrifuge are you interested in replacing it with?
It won't be a centrifuge. It'll be called it's called a fan press.
Fan press?
A fan press. You can Google it and you can find it online. To be honest, I didn't hear of a fan press until about a year ago.
Oh, wow.
And in my experience, I've had belt presses, drum presses, centrifuges, but I hadn't heard of that one. But it just goes to show an old dog can learn new tricks. And I was very impressed with this machine as a demonstration, and which to the point where I consulted with engineers, multiple operators, multiple plants that have implemented this device. And a lot of them are using this to press from secondary sludge, okay, instead of digester sludge, which is a final project to help vector reduction in the process of removal of solids in the plant.
What's the cost of one of these units per centrifuge that you would replace?
Maintenance cost
What's the cost to
of
replace?
the unit, estimated $3.8 million.
And we need two,
One.
just one?
This machine will replace all three centrifuges. It will be designed to handle the estimated output of the biosolids of the plant. The machine itself is about 750 grand. That's just a machine.
Does the machine fit into the area where it's being centrifuged right now? Is it?
We'll have elbow room. And I do propose making some upgrades to the drain system to the plant as well, because we've ran into issues, and that's included with this project.
So 3.8 million to bring everything up to where it needs to be.
That's just with the centrifuge building or the dewatering part. Because there's still the grit problem. And the grit chamber has been down for quite some time. Long before I even got here. And I've yet to get to the numbers and talk to engineers about the cascade outfall of the effluent of the plant. And as soon as I have that, I will forward that information as well.
Thank you.
Can you, I don't know if this was asked, can you describe what that audit contract is regarding wastewater?
I didn't hear.
The audit contract,
We went through it. We didn't know why that expense was in there. He shouldn't be paying for an audit. That comes from the finance or the city manager budget. So we went ahead and just didn't give him any budget and took it out for the future. The audit has to be paid.
Yeah, I was questioning that
Yeah.
myself.
Yes, sir. Yeah, he questioned it. So we went ahead and researched it and we took it out.
same with insurance premiums, those should come out of central administration.
Yes, and we did do a decrease on that. There's only $10,000 in there because last year actuals was 10,000.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mr. Talcott?
Only other thing I have is uniforms at 13,000. Seems like there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's actually 15 people that are supposed to be working there. They have 6 that are vacant. Is that sufficient for that many people?
13,000 is enough for your employees.
I believe when I calculated that out, I originally did it for one time a year, but that we get uniforms and boots twice a year. So I took that 13 and I added it in. Let's see my notes.
Well, that should be sufficient then.
Yes,
huh?
last year you used $3,200.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, 13,000. I used what was on a profile that I had, and I believe it was like $50 a shirt, $60 a pants, and like $200 for a jacket. And then times it by 2 on the pants and the shirts, but not the jackets, because that's once a year or as needed.
What fund does it come out of when, for instance, we're doing maintenance to lines and such, like around like doing pretty much what the utility maintenance workers do, like when we're paying for them to have line trimmers, chainsaws, water, wastewater, what line item does that come out of? Central administration, or does it come? Is it a field supply?
Oh, for the collection lines and
No, like when you guys have the guys out there cleaning around the water, fire hydrants, and then for instance,
Oh, you mean at the lift stations and?
Yeah,
whacking and
yeah,
cleaning that?
exactly. When they're doing the weed whacking and all that, yeah. So what line item does that come out of?
I believe that was put in the building maintenance
Okay,
items.
okay,
Is the way I see that, because where I see it, lift stations are buildings. And that's where they go into maintaining. And overall, I think we are doing an excellent job. My people are, because I go out and I look, and for the most part, and even the plant was fairly clean and well maintained.
we have a situation on La Jolla around one of our wells where we haven't been maintaining around the well. And I know this isn't for you, Rodney, but for Sally and Guadalupe, we need to get out there and be on a more adequate maintenance schedule for cleaning that property. It's off of La Jolla, Mr. Madrid.
Well, the wells aren't my department.
Yeah, yeah, but I'm bringing it up because it's coming to my head right now.
I understand that, because pretty much the wastewater is out of sight, out of mind,
Mhm,
except for lift stations.
mhm.
Because you could see them, like the west side is over here, and Rio Grande's tucked behind, Cadisi's fairly
Yeah.
open.
And that's an example of a lift station that we need to get back on a more adequately cleaning schedule because they've had some situations where it they've called City Hall about that one. So
I'm curious, I drove by it today and it looked beautiful.
within the last month or two
Okay, but I'll tell my foreman,
about cleaning.
and we try to do it, but being shorthanded, sometimes we do get behind on our preventive maintenance. Because again, we're shorthanded and we always got something calling us. It surprised me sometimes what we are finding.
Of course, and we understand that, Mr. Talcott, and it's just, I think it comes back to getting on a good cycle and getting you all the equipment that you need. That's why I ask, where does this line items come up for cleaning hoses? I mean, pressure washers, those kind of things to make
Right,
sure that
it's
you
all
have
building
adequate
maintenance.
equipment and material to get out there and get your job done. Last fiscal year, it came to our attention here on the council, and I want to joke with Counselor Salazar. We understood that GSD, I mean, you had employees bringing their own personal tools to work because they weren't having the necessary equipment and such to get the job done. And so we've made investments into that to make sure that our staff has all the necessary materials and such that they need to be successful out there.
Well, if I may be so bold about, when I first came here and inspected the wastewater facility, there was literally no tools. It had been stripped of all power tools, all hand tools. And pretty much I've taken steps to make sure that that does not happen again. Because as things disappear, I'm to the point where if it leaves, we're not going to replace it, and you'll be using your hands pulling the grass and stuff like that, because this stuff is expensive, and that's how I believe about thieves, and it's not exterior, even though some of it has been like catalytic converters and stuff like that. A lot of that has been in-house, and I won't put up with it.
Thank you, Mr. Talcott. Appreciate that. Counselor Rodriguez.
Actually, my question is for Ms. Baxter. As we go through these budget hearings, every department is needing employees. Wastewater, 6 positions alone. My question to you is, how are we working on our recruitment for the city of Espanola so that we can try and fill these critical positions?
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilor Rodriguez, we're trying to find different avenues to advertise positions as one of the things. We do a lot of online because that just is the trend for online advertising. We try to use different social media. We're even experimenting right now with running a slide at the Dreamcatcher Theater to just try to think of more creative ways to recruit. We've looked at some of our wages, and this is something I know will be pending the 90-day review to look at that. We've talked to some of the supervisors about maybe a more creative approach to the benefits, where we might have an employee who needs a more flexible schedule. We've worked with a trainer to send our supervisors and foremen to leadership training to help them develop the tools they need to help retain employees. And of course, there have been funds made available from the governor's office to help with retention of police personnel. So it still remains a challenging time, but we're trying to think creatively on how we can handle it in both the recruiting and the retention components.
Any other counselors have any questions for Mr. Talcott?
Sir, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Talcott. We appreciate you in the wastewater department.
Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mrs. McCure.
So to continue, Ms. Baxter is going to do a summary of the remaining departments that have not presented, so we can finish this. It's the governing body, city attorney, city manager, city clerk, HR, finance, IT, and central administration. She will be going through these, and any questions you may have, we can go ahead and answer them. Thank you.
So let's start with governing body because they're on the first page. They're on page 4.
And I apologize, Mayor Pro Tem, city councilors. I should have noted for Ms. McCure, we do have our city clerk with us this evening, Ms. Debbie Garcia, and she can actually present on the governing body and the city clerk's office. And I don't know if you'd like for me to proceed with the other departments or.
Thanks, Sally.
I'd like to go through and just note a couple of different things. I have not recommended any changes to the city attorney budget on page 4, other than the claims, judgments, and settlements line item has been increased a little bit. And that budget might get redirected to professional services. That was a preliminary possibility to have maybe an in-house staff to assist with some of our legal issues. Possibly maybe a paralegal or other staff member to assist our city attorney. Continuing next to the city manager budget that begins on page 5. One item that was looked at briefly was the increase to the full-time positions, what that amount represented. And that was for the executive assistant to the mayor and the city manager. So that's the increase we saw in the city manager budget and some of the associated benefits. On page 6, I did want to note, I would like to ask for an additional increase to the uniform line items. It's the 6th item down. The proposed budget amount is $10,000. I would like to request an additional $15,000 for a total of $25,000. Because the city manager budget includes the uniform expense for mechanics, parks, streets, and general services personnel, a total of 24 positions. Those individual budgets do not have a uniform line item.
So I'm perfectly fine with that, Sally, but this goes back to each of the departments having different uniform line items. And in a normal organization, you have a central administration fund where that's just pulled out of that pool. So you told me now tonight there's parks, water, wastewater, field
Um,
ops? Who's pulling out of city manager? Because I just heard a few minutes ago, wastewater has their own uniform line item, water has their own uniform line item. So I understand making that increase, but it's very consuming and it's also very difficult for us to track when you have different line items for different uniforms. 'Cause
Mayor.
If we're gonna do that, we should have them for each of those departments.
It's been looked at both ways over the years. The enterprise funds have their own uniform line items. And community services has theirs. But for field employees in the field operations department, which is fleet, parks and streets, and for general services, a few years ago, the uniform line item was consolidated in the city manager's budget in an attempt to standardize the uniforms that were purchased. So because those budgets do not have their own line items for uniforms, and it's still in the city manager's budget, I'm requesting the increase to accommodate 24 positions that fall under the city manager's line item.
So if that's the case, I'm looking now, here's community services with uniforms, I mean, $1,200. Another 800 from senior citizens. Another 2,000 from planning and zoning. I don't see any uniform line item in GSD, so you're right, okay. So if that's the case, I think we should just have one line item for them all and be under city manager. And so you take away from planning, you take away from senior citizens, you would take, and I understand that because yes, it's like back here, the fleet, you have different logos that are being utilized on the vehicles, you have different shirts and such. We need one standardized uniform logo, what it goes on the shirt. And so I understand that. But if we're going to do this, we need to have just one standard line item for each of the budgets. And so if it's city manager and they're overseeing, but they'll oversee the uniforms for every department except enterprise funds. That's what we need to do then.
And I think that makes a lot of sense.
But then who's processing them? Okay, is the department's going to make the request and then the account code will follow through with the city manager? Or what are we going to do on that aspect?
So when we first began doing the uniform budget this way, we actually had a committee and it included Mr. Jeff Sargent, Mr. Elijah Mares. We looked at some of the options for shirts, pants, and again, because to make it uniform, to standardize, and looked at the prices and came up with a choice of shirts, long sleeve, short sleeve, pants, and then each department would submit their list of names and numbers of garments. And the procurement officer at the time would prepare the paperwork for the city manager's signature and then move forward. We purchase uniforms twice a year, in April and in October, unless we have a new hire who hits their 6-month non-probationary period. We didn't include recreation and senior center in this because recreation uniforms are so different, such as swimwear for the lifeguards and kitchen aprons and sleeve protections for kitchen help in the senior center. And that's why they maintain their own items, their own additional to be able to purchase those specialty items.
I just think for standard bookkeeping procedures, you should just have one line item and it comes out of the one account code. It's a lot easier for us to track how much we're spending on uniforms because I'm going to guarantee some of these departments aren't using all their uniform money.
He said he had 13,000 allocated, 13,325. And he used 3,200. So that's almost a $10,000 difference. So I understand what you're saying, but I do understand the difference between enterprise
Yeah, I see that.
and non-enterprise.
I see that. I just would like us to have, like, and I'm not picking on a department, but I understand water went and got some baseball caps, which are nice and fine and dandy, okay? And then the fire department went and got some baseball caps too. So I mean, you have, everyone's just doing whatever they want with the uniforms, and that's not what we need to have one standard thing where uniforms are coming out of one line item, and that's what everyone gets. Okay, we don't have different things going on in different departments, because then that leads us to the mismanagement aspect.
We could return back to having a committee who selected those options. When we had done that before, we asked for the representatives who supervised the employees who worked in the field, because they knew the requirements of the uniforms, how they held up, what worked in weather. Both fire department and police department are driven, the numbers are driven by collective bargaining agreements.
Of course.
And they both specify what can be allowed as purchase items with those uniform allowances.
Being that you're HR, Sally, what's the normal amount that any entity would pay to have uniforms for their staff per person?
It's gone up. We've looked at that recently, and with the inflation that we experienced, we're looking at a minimum of about $35 for a shirt, $50 for a pair of pants. What we normally offer our staff are 5 shirts and 5 pairs of pants in the spring, and 5 shirts and 5 pairs of pants in the fall.
And that takes evaluation, because I know the chief went back to the drawing board and he found cost savings because of the way that they were doing the uniform allowance at the PD. I mean, we were spending $3,000 a police officer or something along those lines. And the chief found where we could scrape that. We were going and allowing them, I think, 2 or 3 times a year to go and get something. I mean, he was able to really get that cut costs.
In the collective bargaining agreement, a new hire at the police department is outfitted for $500, and then every quarter receives a uniform allowance for a total of $1,250 per year per person.
I think it was more though at one time.
And there's been requests because of the age of the collective bargaining agreement to increase, because it's harder and harder for staff to find what they need for those dollar amounts.
Is this something that we could do where just it's all under the manager's budget?
We could, I would still recommend considering maybe a separation for the enterprise funds.
Yeah.
And then fire and police because of their collective bargaining agreements. And they do have, generally it's lieutenants who handle those reviews of requests for purchases. And then maybe allowing a small budget in addition for recreation and senior center to correspond to the special needs of their services, the lifeguards and the kitchen staff.
And you wanted an additional variance of what, Sally? You wanted an additional 5?
15,
15
Mayor, so it came to a total of 25,000.
from the 10 that it's currently at.
That's correct.
I don't have an issue with that.
I have a question on the animal control, shelter services. Is the contract 72,000 or 70,000 or 100,000?
It's 70.
No, it was 60. I don't know where it came with this.
Oh, it went up to
I think
72.
I
Yeah,
could
but-
see 72, the last payment. I
Yes.
just wanted to verify this. So that is budgeted at 100,000 till I came before the council to ask what the actual agreement was, because I didn't have.
72,
Okay. So there will be
25.
decrease there and put 72,000 saved. Thank you.
And just know that that's not all that the city of Espanola does for the shelter, because
We do building maintenance too.
we take care of all their maintenance. Do we pay their utilities?
Mhm.
We pay all.
Part of
their
the central
utilities
administration.
Yes, ma'am, but that's just for the contract. All that other is taken into consideration.
In kind.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
But we just needed the contract amount to
72.
correctly stated in the budget.
So I hate to be the bearer of bad news and Sally, since we're here on the the city manager budget, sorry, not the general manager. Regarding that with the animal shelter services. These contractual services have come up in the past and it's going to continue to come up. What entities are we giving money that are nonprofit agencies in the city of Espanola? And I believe it's Northern New Mexico Regional Arts Center, Espanola Valley Humane Society, Espanola YMCA Teen Center. And there's another entity, there's about two, I think, entities more.
Those are correct, and I'll have to work with Ms. McCure to see if we can identify any other size sources. And we're trying to consolidate all of that information for the governing body. And also Ms. McCure's been working on consolidating information on our accounts receivable for the governing body as well.
So I bring this up because obviously it's become an issue to ensure that each of these entities are compliant 501c3 entities. That's really important for us. So we're not violating anti-donation clause. Each of these entities operate out of city facilities. I don't believe we're paying the utilities for the YMCA Teen Center. I know we are paying the utilities for the Northern New Mexico Regional Arts Center. We do have one entity in the city that does operate out of a city facility. We don't give them money whatsoever. And that's the San Gabriel Historical Society. And
The
they've,
other one at Convento.
no, that's Northern New Mexico Regional Arts
They
Center.
rent from us?
No, we give them money and they operate there. They don't rent from us. See, this is what I'm talking about. We,
Say the title of them again. please.
Northern New Mexico Regional Arts Center, Espanol
The other one that's across.
YMCA Teen Center,
Oh.
San Gabriel Historical Society, the Espanol Valley Humane Society.
Oh, where Joseph Lopez and Stevie Hill were.
Yeah. Oh, Northern Rio Grande Heritage. Yes, but we don't give them money.
They rent from us.
Yes.
That being said, that is one of the tasks that we're doing to get our accounts receivable, the contracts that are paid out to make sure they are up to date, and any leases to make sure there's a billing, to make sure the revenue that needs to be coming into the city is with all those departments. We are going to be reaching out to all department heads and maybe even the counselors that know projects or programs or entities that are out there, so we can make sure that they're either paying their fair share or we have a valid contract to be doing paying them out.
Because, for instance, Mayor Pro Tem brought up now, we handle the utilities for the animal shelter out there in San Pedro. So that's an example of a fringe that we're providing to them. Northern New Mexico Regional Arts Center, on top of the allocation we give them, we're also providing them with the utilities, usage of the facility. These are all coupled as fringe benefits that are on top of that. The YMCA Teen Center, I'm not sure. That facility they're operating out of is a city facility. We need to be ensuring that we're getting a deliverable and we're getting reports back of the money that we're giving out. And we have to be very careful of this aspect and ensuring that we're not violating anti-donation clause.
That has to be part of your contracts, even if it's in kind, to note it, so it's documented that it's not just compensation monetary, it's also in kind.
Yes, because Mayor Pro Tem's correct. We don't just give 72,000 to the animal shelter. I mean, the building maintenance and I don't know how we handle the YMCA Teen Center. I know at the plaza, I know that we do handle when there's a leak at the post office with Northern New Mexico Regional Arts Center, or there's a situation there, I know we handle and address that. But I'm not sure what we're doing at the YMCA Teen Center.
I will look into that, Mayor.
And then again, I mean, so all these entities are operating out of a city facility. We support all the entities except one. And so this entity has come forward. They've indicated it to us. And, you know, I'm just putting it out there to the council. We have to be fair to all the entities that do operate it out of our facilities, that we do have lease agreements with, that are providing a service to the community. It's important that there's some equilibrium between all those nonprofit agencies and ensuring that while we give out this money from the contractual amount and the in-kind also that we're providing them, but also we can't set these entities up for failure. And I would really like us to start getting reports, at least quarterly maybe, or at least biannually from each of these nonprofit agencies that are operating out of the city facilities. Councilor Rodriguez.
Ms. Baxter, I have some questions on the city manager's budget on the dues. Could you explain the increase?
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilor Rodriguez. The dues item includes the Energy Communities Alliance, the Municipal League.
No, Sally, the municipal league is under the governing body.
Oh, excuse me. We identified what appears that we had not paid possibly the Energy Communities Alliance dues out of the end of the last fiscal year. So we'll have that as well as the current year dues this year. And that accounts for the increase.
How about commitments and other fees? FY 23 was 42,000 approximately, and now we're at 15.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilor Rodriguez. Trying to research that line item, it looks like we had paid the lobbyist out of that line item. And that contract is, I believe, up for renewal and expired at the end of March.
So going on that, I was told that that money was being paid for by the movie revenue film, and I don't see that anywhere here on the revenue side of the budget. Where did we deposit the movie revenue?
It's under charges for services.
On page 2, okay.
It's lumped in there. It doesn't have its own line item. It's.
There's no way we only got $3,000, Mrs. McCure, because we generated close to $50,000 just from renting Hunter Ford property and such for about 2 months last summer. We generated close to $50,000. So
The fire department also.
oh yes, that's correct. The fire department, and we also let them utilize the police department, the back offices as well. So
We will have to research. I was not aware of that.
it's okay. It's not on you, Mrs. McCure, but we need to find out where that actually was distributed, because that was a significant.
Oh, it's on page 3. Film revenue, 57,000. It is there.
Okay.
It's under
That
various
was over
others.
50. So this film TV revenue, that was what was supposed to pay for the lobbyist. It was publicly acknowledged here, minutes reflect it. That's where that money was supposed to come for, to pay for that.
And your general fund revenue,
Things that came from that money.
The retail coach and the lobby.
Retail coach and this issue.
that your general fund revenue makes your general fund budget, so that will be taken into account when increasing that budget. That revenue is there to support the expense.
Thank you, Counselor. That's correct. Two items were indicated that were coming out of that film TV revenue.
What was spent on the retail coach, Mayor?
I don't know. I understand that we have not been in contact there with them for several months.
So are we going to consider lobbyists in the future? And if we are, where are we?
I think it's really important. It's been very beneficial for us. It's gotten us a lot of meetings. It just has to be utilized correctly. So, well, the retail coach is another example of a fund that was supposed to be utilized in. I understand they haven't been contacted since January. It's essentially money that's not being utilized. During the session, there's a lot that happens, but also there's a lot of things that happen behind doors. It's important to keep on a lobbyist if we can find the money. If not, I understand we can't. We'll just go back to the drawing board. But it's gotten us meetings with Water Trust Board and such and figure out navigating the process. I have a weekly update with them now. They've been trying to get a hold of somebody here at the city for the last couple of months too. I'm supposed to have a meeting with them this Friday with the lobbyists. And they hadn't been paid for several months as well. And so,
That was for all the way up to March, they were paid. There is an invoice from March to June that needs to be because there's no contract after March 30th. So a new contract needs to be entered with the lobbyist.
and I'm pulling up here. Was for a total of $9,300 from March. So it's under the procurement
Yes.
request. But what's the total amount? I need you guys to do that total amount review
Wait
to
wait
see.
a minute, Mayor, you're telling me that we got billed $9,300 for March?
No, we billed, we haven't paid since the end of February.
It was 19,000 in the contract up to March, April, May, and June. There was an additional invoice with no contract. So that one is on hold till his meeting to see about getting a valid contract because we couldn't pay. There was a purchase order for 19,000 up to March 30th of 23, and that was paid. That
So
was
the-
processed.
And
Yeah, sorry, no, go ahead. Yeah, she hit it.
so the 3 months that are being billed, what was the amount of that billing?
$9,374.
Who are they lobbying in March, April and
They've
May?
been meeting with DOT about all the grant opportunities that we haven't been applying for.
Well, if we're not doing our end over here, then it's worth us to spend money over
I
there.
completely agree with you, Mayor Pro Tem, but you know, every day is a new situation with the grants.
If there are no further questions on the city manager's budget, I'd like to move to page 8. And just note on the finance department budget, there is an increase in contractual services. And this is a contract entered into with Ms. Joyce Sandoval not to exceed $25,000 to help with the reconciliations that are pending. For the IT department, there are 2 line items that had an increase. Equipment and machinery is increased to replace an obsolete server in in IT. Obsolete can also mean that it's no longer supported by the manufacturer. So we have an addition of almost 12,000 for that. And then under software, $78,300 would be to migrate all city systems to Office 365. And that would eliminate a lot of the email issues that we've had under the current Microsoft platform.
Ellie, can you go a little bit further about that? The IT positions.
So I spoke with our IT manager, and this would be a cloud-based software and more modern. It would migrate all of our computers, platforms, tablets to the Office 365. And based on these budget presentations, since His Honor Judge Madrid had requested to move separately for court, we would actually have to get revised quotations, and we expect to see a decrease in this amount because when this budget was prepared, it included courts and migrating.
The Zoom went mute. We can't hear you anymore. I don't know if y'all can hear me, but I can't hear you all.
Council. I can hear you, Counselor Justin Salazar Torres.
Okay, dokie, I can hear you too, but I can't hear anything from the city.
No, it just
Hello,
abruptly
can you hear
stopped.
us?
Now I can
Okay,
hear
now
you.
we can.
Let me sit a little closer to the microphone. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. It just went totally no sound whatsoever, but it's back. Thank you.
Beginning on page 7, at the bottom of page 7, Human Resources Department, I wanted to note the increase in positions. It's full-time positions, but we have part-time positions bundled in this document. That is for a summer intern for the Human Resources Department. Going to page 8. We tried to maintain a reasonably flat budget other than our intern position, but I would like to request the addition of $3,000 for promotional items as part of our ongoing attempts to improve recruitment. We're very active in job fairs, and promotional items help draw people to the table. And once somebody's at the table, we have the opportunity to talk to them about what an excellent employer the city of Espanola is. With that, I am happy to stand for questions.
Anyone? Sally, can you go a little bit further on the contractual services, where that goes? Can you explain that to us?
Contractual services, Mayor Pro Tem, city councilors, in the HR department, that is our drug tests. We do pre-employment and post-accident, and this is for all of the departments. And those are the primary expenses for that.
Anyone have any other questions?
Don't have any. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
Moving on to finance. Or just, I just wanted to clarify, on the audit contract, because we had 2 auditors, obviously that's 2 payments.
Yes.
Okay, how did we pay for that? Obviously, we had some overages, I'm sure, then in this line item, because I'm sure we spent more than $45,000 on 2 auditors.
They bill on the percentage of how the audit is completed, so the audit hasn't been completely billed out, so that PO will roll over into the new year with the new monies. And the prior year auditors were paid.
Okay.
Tell me about the difference in full-time positions in finance.
On the full-time positions in finance, it is the GL accountant that has been advertised for quite some time. That one was added, grants specialist that is needed. And then the position that I'm currently holding, but that will probably not be in the budget full year. So that will be a decrease by the end of the year.
So the grant person, wasn't that Ms. Hawkes's job? Is it already in the budget?
They had removed it.
It had been removed to use that funding for other positions. It had to be replaced.
So
I thought part of it was to pay.
No, it was gone. The money was gone. It was wiped.
Mayor Pro Tem, city councilors, initially the financial analyst position had been used to increase wages for other staff positions. When Ms. Hawkins left, then the position she vacated was reworked into the general ledger accountant. The grant administrator or grant specialist position is one that had existed under the grant manager's supervision. So Diane had supervised, Anna Hall had been in that position and vacated.
So this whole time, I'm unaware of what, any of this. I'm thinking, I wonder why they haven't hired somebody to fulfill the grant needs. Huh. And now we know. You thought it was open also?
It was open because I issued him, when we had his evaluation, we had concerns about what was going on in the grant section. And so I had a concern about IT and for grants, and I discussed with you all, and I sent you an email on March 21st, sending an email that I had directed him to open up those positions, and I didn't know that they were unbudgeted until recently.
So when were those 86? Do you know?
Do you know, Sally, when they officially, the grant administrator?
It was earlier this year, but I don't remember the exact date. But it was, I believe it's when we were sharing the committee room, so that would have been the January to March timeframe this year.
Thank you.
That being said, your finance will be fully staffed. You will have a good team. The finance team that you the finance team you currently have, your accounts payable, your purchasing, your payroll is working great for your finance. The only missing piece is the accounts receivable for the grants, and I see the city doing very well. If we can fill that position, that will help the city tremendously. I know it's an increase, the positions were there, but it will help the city because you guys have a very strong finance department, but that one piece will complete the puzzle. So I hope you guys consider approving that because it would help the council, the employees, the constituents. This budget is a good, strong budget for that.
I totally agree that that's a very necessary position, accounts receivable, especially when we're dealing with grants and ICAP, all those other things that run through that office.
You know, we can make investments in public safety all day and community services, but if we're not able to have a strong finance department to support us, to be able to carry out these initiatives and such and do drawdowns, and we're just spinning our feet in the mud.
Any more, if there's no more questions, Ms. Debbie's next.
Thank you, Ms. McCure.
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and councilors. I will start with the governing body. And it is basically a flat budget. There is. These are all based on actuals and then an increase on contractual services of 5,000.
What do we need that for?
And that was based on the actual, that was based on actual expense from last year. I was looking into to see what was paid, but some type of contractual service was paid out of the governing body, and I'm looking into it to check. And the issues we're having is there's a lot of entries. I can't just pull up expense. I have to go pull the entry to see what was transferred in. So that's been a little bit of delay with this short timeline, what some of the expenses were. So my apologies for not having that, but there was a little bit of delay getting the backup to see the expenses that were transferred.
I'll say this out loud. I've never been comfortable with any contractual services being on the governing bodies deal. I don't like it. I just think there's no need for it. We have no business contracting anybody for anything. We just need to do our jobs.
So would you like for me to strike that from the budget and put it in the city manager's budget for the contractual? Or
Are
just,
we sure this isn't the stenographer?
no, that comes out of planning and zoning, sir.
Why does it come out of planning and zoning?
What about
And the clerk, and the clerk.
Oh, I was gonna say, okay.
I have no issue with you doing that. I just don't like having any money that the governing body has a say over at like that. It's just rubs me wrong. I don't like it. So we can 86 that.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind me interjecting something, there was a issue with, it could be a little bit of stenography services because there was an issue with getting me paid. I wasn't paid for a while because of some PO issues and things a while back. And Jordan told me, well, I may have to pay you. I'm probably gonna have to pay you out of my budget. So I don't know what happened. I just want to let you know I don't know what happened with all of that. But
And we're researching it. I'll check with Ms. LaRue in accounts payable to verify what it may be. And there was some expense transferred, but it won't be in your budget and we'll go forward. But I will let you guys know just so you have peace of mind of what it was that got paid last year. This was for last FY.
what I didn't get paid for was practice. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Any more questions there?
There is an increase on the dues there is a decrease on the dues, and the dues on that are the municipal leagues dues.
We did that based on actuals, yes.
They charge us according to our population.
There's like a bracket. So we were charged, I pulled up the bill today, which needs to get paid still. $16,000, but they just, and Counselor Dennis, Tim, you're on the board. I believe they just did a realignment of the membership dues.
Yes, that is correct. I'm not sure of the exact details, but yeah, there was one.
So, I mean, it's probably gonna be closer now to this 18 now. If it was at 16, we're probably close to this 18.
And we get billed that in, no?
We got billed in March or April and it hasn't been paid still.
That's it. We can go to city clerk.
Okay, basically, I have a flat budget. The only real increase is 50,000, but it's for an actual election I'm going to have in March of 2024. And with that comes a slight increase with supplies for the election year of election expenses. Increase in professional development. We will need to attend election school, myself and the deputy clerk. There is also International Municipal Clerks Association dues. I do have a decrease in payroll as there was 3 months vacancy as my records clerk position was taken away. Also added another month there, about a month and 2 weeks that I was working all by myself. I do need a third employee. Honestly, full-time would be just for IPRAs and business licenses alone. I would like to have a summer intern again. She was of great help. And she ended on last Thursday. And I also have a little bit of an increase on contractual services. That's budgeting for all my software, the website, iWorks, Civic Clerk, Que Dice, all that gets paid out of my budget. And I think that's all I have. I'm happy to stand for questions.
So There's only a $9,000 difference in the full-time positions, and I'm a little bit interested about that because they lost a full-time position in that department. So how do we only account for a $9,000 increase? Because that job was being paid at $15 an hour at the last, was for that records clerk.
I think the summer intern was included in this budget. If you, I don't have the big spreadsheet, but I think there was 3 employees and the summer intern was included there on halftime. On that big spreadsheet, and they should be towards the top.
Because that was a transfer from the city clerk budget to the manager's budget for that additional full-time position. For the executive administrator job, right?
Yeah, there was 3.
Yes, it's 139 and it matches the salary matrix. The part-time employee, the summer intern is included in this budget.
So you have your full-time positions. However, our city clerk did say that she was hoping for a record specialist to be placed back into her budget, and I don't see anywhere that's reflected as a vacant position.
I wasn't aware of that position. She said it was taken away. Maybe Ms. Baxter can elaborate on that position.
Mayor,
Use your mics, folks.
Mayor Pro Tem, Councilor Rodriguez, the executive assistant to mayor and city manager position was created from the records technician position in the city's clerk's office. It was done late in the fiscal year. So that's why it may still have that actual amount in the line item.
So we've already gone in the direction where there's some individuals that are here part-time. Is there any ability where we could bring in someone part-time to handle and maybe assist with IPRAs on 2 days a week or something like that? Is that something that Ms. Garcia would be amenable to doing?
The budget is there for the halftime. The budget is there for the halftime position in the clerk's office. That would be at the discretion of, but it is budgeted right now in there.
I don't see the need to have a full-time, but to assist, we've had a large influx in the last month and a half with IPRAs. And no.
It is an extremely busy department. There has pretty much been 3. I definitely need the help. There's just, it's so much in this
Well,
department.
the big thing is you pay up front to avoid paying on the back end. If we're not in compliance with IPRAs and we fall behind, then we'll have to go to court, obviously, and then spend more up. And then 2, additionally, I mean, we're even because of the influx of what we've been getting on IPRAs, we've been handling them to legal counsel as well, because some of them need to go through the attorney because they're requesting a lot of personnel files and such that obviously need to be redacted. So that's drawn out the time consuming process as well. And so that's an expense that's being put to the legal counsel that we could hold that in-house if we had someone part-time.
So Ms. Garcia, would you be amenable to have a part-time position or part-time person to come in and help the city clerk's office?
I would take any help at this point, but honestly, it needs 3 full-time people for the future. I'll take whatever I can get right now because it's pretty tough in the department.
So this is advertised as a council consideration discussion item, action item. I don't know how we've been doing this. The rest of the hearings, I apologize. But essentially, we can take action if you all would like, essentially, unless there's a consensus, this is the only discussion I'm hearing the entire hearings where we've talked about adding a position. So that's why I wanted to see what's the pleasure of the council.
Actually, we talked about adding a position in fire department to be paid out by opioid funds, so we haven't discussed it previously.
Okay,
Department
Yes.
opiate person.
So-
So three that we.
the only thing I have a concern is on that opiate, we need to have a complete plan and it needs to come before Mr. Rennick to make sure that we can use that money for those
And that,
purposes.
that was what was
Yeah,
discussed.
yeah, that's the only thing about those two jobs is if we create them and we fund them with the opioid, they need to meet those specific parameters because we can walk into a lot of liability if we don't meet them around those specific parameters. Because it's a lot more stringent and such rather than broad like we originally had thought. And so when it was brought to my attention by chiefs of fire and police, I indicated they need to come forward with the plan and direct that to the manager and Mr. Rennick to see and ensure that that's a proper use of the opiate money. But if that's the pleasure of the council to go in that direction and such, do you have anything to add on that, Mr. Rennick?
Mayor, just that the opioid funds are a work in progress. And it appears the state auditor is going to be taking a pretty close look at those expenditures. I think that what the city thinks about it and what the allowed uses are pretty much different. The allowed uses they're items that the city typically does not provide. In other words, if you have to build a rehab center, if you have to staff it with employees, so on, all of that will come to an end when the opioid money comes to an end. So you have to be thinking about how to do that. I don't think the city has really considered that at the moment. It's very, very complex. It's not so simple as just hiring somebody as a first responder with that type of experience. That's a simple deal. The rest of it is very complex. And I do think it not only should go to the city managers in our office, I think that the council probably needs to take a deep look at how opioid funds can be spent and what the needs of the community are.
So based on that, Mr. Rennick, because we're reviewing the general fund and the enterprise funds and the opioids, it's its own separate account. Is there any possibility where we can just do a special session to start doing a budget planning for the opioid money?
I think that's a good idea.
I think that's gonna be our best bet if we're gonna talk about these positions, because we need to be very careful in how we utilize that money. It has to meet all those parameters.
Mayor, if I may, you have fund accounting, so your opioid money is in a separate fund that isn't budgeted, you have the cash in there. But with that being said, I know the main goal of it is prevention. And I did, Ms. Archuleta did reach out to me and she said that Mr. Yahtzee had told her that she would be starting a program, something like Project Race, but not, the name was gonna be different and the funding was gonna come from the opioid. I just need direction from the council if we put a hold on that, because the opioid money is how she was thinking to run her prevention program. I'm not sure, that was before, I can't answer, I have to present it to the board with the information I have. And I will go forward, but right now your opioid money is not budgeted, it's on your fund listing. It will be part of the budget as cash, but there's no expense and no expenditures will go out until the board does approve how that money will be utilized.
We need to put a hold to that because we need to, just because we made commitments and such, there's a lot of things that didn't run through legal that are coming back to kick us now. And so we need to be ensuring that we're doing all the specific parameters of the opioid program. And so I admire the work Ms. Archuleta does, but we need to go strictly and stringent based on the parameters that were given by the legal counsel before we even dive into what we're going to use that money for. Because That's a reoccurring situation, and that's why we're in the situation we are now, folks, is because we haven't crossed all our Ts and dotted all our Is. And I would really recommend us to have just a specific session regarding the opioid money. And if it's these 3 positions that are being talked about with using the opioid money, there's been other discussion. Whatever the case, we need to sit down and talk about it. I don't think this is the right juncture. And
Is the opiate money considered for this position that she's talking about, this IPRA situation that's coming in relatively hard? And every time that the city of Espanola doesn't fulfill the law where the IPRA is concerned, it turns into a liability for us. Is it possible that we could hire somebody that keep them under 40 hours so that we wouldn't have to start with, at least until we do a quarterly review or a mid-year review, and then possibly if the money's there, go ahead and hire them full time? But I think you have your summer intern already budgeted in, correct? Is it budgeted on a separate line item than your full times?
And Mayor, Madam Pro Tem, Counselor Justin Salazar Torres did ask me to separate the full-time, and I will for the final budget for tomorrow, the part-time and full-time positions will be separated. Because
they
it
only
was,
have 2 part-time positions is my understanding.
but like under the swimming pool, under the recreation or the aquatic, they do have their part-time. So some departments do have part-time and
Those
they
are
did-
temporary.
or temporary, but we pay it out a different line item. I need to pull it out of the full-time positions to show it. But it's on your listing. If they're gray or baby blue, those are your part-time employees. Or green, I can't remember what color.
It's like a little light gray.
Yeah, just like gray are the ones that are not working the full.
So I have a question under court. Lysandra Gonzalez is a judge.
Yes,
Is that the alternate judge? So that money is not being paid out.
It's not encumbered until when she serves in that capacity.
Okay, because it looks
She's
like,
based on like as an hourly employee.
okay.
but for good financial management, it has to be budgeted. So if for whatever reason, it's long-term, more than a couple of hours, it is already budgeted and doesn't affect the overall budget of the general fund.
Speaking of that, on that aspect, is she covered, like, for instance, liability and such as employee because she's on the rolls, or is it only just during the time that she's conducting herself? That I've wondered about that, how that works.
Mayor, it is only when she is actively working for the city, then she is a regular payroll employee for a short duration and is fully covered by all of our commercial insurances.
So like, for instance, she's called to go to a hearing, crossing Fairview Lane, gets in a car accident.
The city would be protected.
Because that,
So going
again, forgive me,
back to-
then we do have 3 technically part-time employees, but she's on call essentially.
We also have, I believe it's a grant-funded part-time position in the library. And
That's
of
another-
course, we have our seasonals and some temporary employees.
So this record specialist, could we visit that tomorrow, and could you compile some figures as to what the options are as far as full-time, part-time, whatever?
Mayor. You would like me to add an additional position to the clerk's office, like get figures for it?
Yeah, I'd like to see what that's gonna cost us. The reason that I think about this is because the number of IPRAs that are coming in at this time are just getting ridiculous by the day. It literally takes like one person focused just on that to be able to stay with it. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not even sure that one person can handle it, to be honest with you. It's that much.
I would hope that we could kind of give Miss McCure some direction tonight so that tomorrow, hopefully she can have everything hammered out. We don't have time past this week.
No, I'm fine. If you bring me, add an employee whether it's part-time, full-time, what the benefits would cost. And I'm fine with that, Mayor. That's the only.
Because that's my only concern is Ms. McCure's on a very tight
Does
timeline.
that mess you up? Is that hard to do?
I can go ahead and add it.
I mean,
to that.
we can, Mr. Rennick, we can vote tonight, correct? It's advertised.
Vote on what?
Essentially, we can ask her to, if we want to do a full-time position and then come up with some scenarios like Mayor Pro Tem is asked.
I wouldn't think you need a vote for that. It's just
Oh, okay.
direction.
Okay, well, if the consensus of the councils in that direction,
I think it's best to get the numbers on the final budget and then we'll figure it out.
it's just really important that tomorrow we kind of come out of that meeting where we submit something to DFA because Mrs. McCure is going to have her work cut out for her. Which it has.
Yes, ma'am. That is a concern, and that's why the revenues were budgeted so conservative. The cash amounts are from reports that were ran from the system. These are the actual cash amounts. They may have been different if we'd had all the revenue posted, but these are the numbers that was provided from the system, so I had to go forward with them. I really think it's a better picture, but at the moment with the information provided to give true accurate figures to you, the council, I use the reports as is, didn't estimate on any cash, use the true cash balance. Yes, there's a lot of negatives, but I wanted to show that so you guys would see the true picture. And then when the revenues are posted, this picture will get better, but I did not have control or authority or any.
All the revenue, the negative, expenditure, and the positives. That was a big.
Yes, ma'am. And that's what it is. The cash.
Real deals though, huh?
Yeah, the cash is real. And then the revenue is based on the grants, the agreements, what's going to come in. And then the expense is based on the needs and the programs that are happening, like the city clerk, where her budget is based on her election, her needs, and now an additional FTE. So that's how we base the expense. The revenues were conservative, and I did state that the first meeting, and then the cash is from the reports, the general ledger, the trial balance, and the account summary reports. I made sure to verify all these cash balances before I came before you.
I don't see the school resource officer as a revenue. I don't see the school resource officer as a revenue.
Yes, ma'am. In prior years, it had been budgeted at 10,000 because there has not been any activity and there was no request or drawdown that the money was going to come in. I think the chief of police actually did the reimbursement by himself. I haven't seen it. A budget increase will go if that money does come in, and for future, it'll be budgeted based on the contract, but without any proper documentation, revenue can't be put in the budget without either the backup, the proper documentation, or a budget increase to your budget to see the revenue that's actually coming in for additional fundings. Did that answer your question, ma'am?
Yeah, so that's just, I'm just going over it, thinking about what monies do I know come in, and were you able to find out about the 1% extra on the franchise fees from Hemis Co-op?
I have some emails out to see if somebody would respond to me. I didn't actually call anybody. I did send some emails because I was trying to get this produced for you, for the council, and then I'm gonna continue researching all kinds of fundings. We do have emails out to, again, the directors are volunteering. We have this, we have that. So we're just sending a lot of emails out, trying to get the money flowing back.
Anyone have any other questions for the clerk's budget?
No.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. And I didn't have any knowledge, again, any paperwork, any receivable on that. So I I did it based on actuals. It was 25,000 after speaking with Mr. Sargent. He's the one that told me it was a monthly of 25,000. So that revenue, I can actually budget it tomorrow higher, but I just wanted to get the accurate number because I did not see an agreement or a lease. And again, we weren't going to put any numbers that didn't have documentation. So if the council can give me guidance as to what that agreement is, it's not a problem to put that revenue in.
There's a thing in the minutes, but I don't know if there's an executed contract. We approved a contract. We did approve a contract.
And again, the finance department and the positions that are being hired are gonna track those types of agreements and leases. If an invoice needs to start going out, or if they just do the honor system and they pay automatically, that's good. But some people won't pay automatically if they don't get an invoice. It's not on purpose, but an invoice always helps them pay. So if it's 25,000 a year, I can budget it at least at half, so you guys can see the revenue in there if that's your pleasure, or I can leave it at as is. But I will take a recommendation or guidance from you.
So Mrs. McCure, one of the things that I know you were having an issue going in when you first started is we don't have a good catalog of lease agreements and rental agreements for all the different various city properties and such. Is that still an issue?
Yes, me and Ms. Baxter have discussed it at length, and that is a concern and an issue. That's one of the main projects and priorities of the new positions because that helps build your budget. That helps you pay for the trash trucks, the solid waste, the wastewater. So if we have a good listing of our leases and even what we pay out the contracts, it helps forecast your budgets better. You guys can plan better. Like Mayor Pro Tem said, have reserves or some contingency funds in case stuff happens. The city will have all that in place. So that's why it's, again, so important to document your leases, money going out, money coming in, and that's better information for the council to the constituents. They can take it out into the streets and explain it to the employees, explain it to their constituents when they have questions. So again, we're hoping to get some good candidates there. The jobs are posted. If you guys have any people with financial backgrounds, please send them to apply. So we can get a good pool of candidates to help the city get going with all their money, because the city has a lot of stuff to offer, but we just need that little push. And again, please, if there's any applicants that you can think of, send people to the website so they can apply if they're interested.
Speaking of that, Ms. McCure, I'm seeing here too, you have a decrease in the rental of Nambe meals.
I'm looking for.
It's on page 2. It's right above the peak behavioral health.
It's on the revenue on the
So
green.
it's $5,000 less, and then as well as the crisis center, you have $3,700. It's page 2. Mayor Pro Tem.
So again, Mayor, the revenues were budgeted very conservative. This was based on the prior year, what was received. Again, if it should be more, maybe some invoices should have been sent out to Nambe Mills. Maybe they just hadn't paid revenue again. Like I was telling Ms. Benavides, since up to April is posted, March is reconciled. So we are going to get the revenues posted. It's a better picture, but to be fair and safe, this is what had to be presented based on the information that was there.
I understand, because my thing is the Nambe Mills has been rented by the city of Espanola since 1995 under Mayor Chavez, and then the crisis center has been rented as well since 2003. I mean, these are pretty accurate numbers that are coming. I understand your numbers are going to vary based on FY23 because of what's actually received, but we should be a little bit more consistent. And I get it, you did a soft budget. I understand that, but these are longtime tenants where we have, as far as I know, we haven't renegotiated their lease agreements. The money that's coming in should be the money that's actual based on what their longtime tenants.
And
It's paying $1,200 a month.
and I do not disagree. I agree, but
So that agreement actually is set. It's come before us. I just found out. It's been sitting on someone's desk for quite some time. And that needs to be renegotiated because they have intended an interest to continue utilizing Van Mills, that site on Industrial Park Road.
And with that being said, Mayor, if we have an actual list of the contracts, we wouldn't have to, like you said, if that's long-term, we wouldn't have to deal on historical numbers. We have the actual agreement and that can be budgeted. If we have the actual agreement, we wouldn't have to be waiting on reconciliations and be waiting on actual numbers. We'd have the agreement with the amount and that would be in your budget. So that's gonna help having the agreements all centralized.
Ms. McCure, you said earlier that you weren't sure if the city of Espanola was invoicing for these contracts. I think that we should be invoicing for every single contract that we have per month for whatever the agreement is.
Yes, ma'am. And that new position, that's what it's gonna do, but I can't answer for prior, just from what I see going forward. That's why that position is so essential, because that's the money, that's how you're gonna be able to build budgets year after year and buy the trash trucks, fix the roofs, fix whatever. And if we have someone monitoring that, hey, somebody, one of the renters didn't pay, but we're sending them invoices and we have the documentation. And I think that's essential to help not just the finance, the city in general. So that's the goal. So please, we're gonna go forward doing that.
I also think it's essential for our audits. It's essential to have those documents so that our auditors are able to follow these contracts.
Yes, in reviewing your FY22, I did do some research backwards to try and go forward. There was some notes not finding some concerns of a receivables. So this has been an issue, the receivables on the FY21 audit, the FY22 audit should almost be completed. They were waiting on some documentation they hadn't gotten. We were able to send that over, or Ms. Joyce was able to send that over. So that should be coming before the council very soon. But I know in the FY21 budget, because I thought maybe when I was doing the budget that there was something going on with the cash, but it was already documented in the FY21 audit. So the numbers are accurate.
I only have one more question.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Concerning the cannabis tax, there's 150,000 budgeted. What has the city received as of yet?
Number, I don't have it handy, I can tell you, but it had to have been around like 148, 155 more or less, because like I said, I did it very conservative because 3 months of GRT wasn't documented, and last year there was no budget because DFA said don't budget your cannabis GRT last year. But this year we're the city's able to budget it, but that was again a conservative number based on the actual revenues received.
I've been looking up the revenues monthly on the internet. And Espanola is right up there with the top sellers of cannabis in the state. Believe it or not, man, they're killing it. So there should be some money coming in from that.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
That's it, yeah.
thank you. Going on the franchise tax for telephone, I know a lot of people have made a migration, but is it really that significantly lower?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
But again, the tax hasn't been posted for 3 months, conservative number. And at the 90-day review, I can come with the actual June 30th revenue. The expense is true to date because the expenses were ran till June 30th. The revenue, yeah, they're not soft, they're just not a complete picture to show you guys the true year to date. Any other questions?
I just want to say thank you very much for your energy and your effort that you put into producing something for this community. I know that you were put in a difficult position. I'm grateful to the staff that you have. Every single one of those people that you mentioned are incredible employees. Sandra, Emma, all those people that are working over there are incredible employees. I am hopeful that we get a complete budget. I'm hopeful that it's something that we can stick to and that we can make work. And I'm looking forward to getting this completed and to the state in a timely fashion. Thank you.
Thank you.
And lastly, I'd just like to say I greatly appreciate you guys considering a third FTE for me, as this is an extremely busy department. Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions before this body? Mr. Rennick, did you want us to go into executive to discuss this? We don't have it on tomorrow's agenda.
Mayor, the acting city manager Baxter and I attended mediation last Friday, and we can report on that. It's
Okay.
not urgent and it won't take long, but if you want to, we can do that.
It's on the Darren Herrera case.
If it won't take long, I'll find stuff.
Notice is hereby given that the mayor and governing body of the city of Espanol will enter into session in accordance with the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. Pursuant to New Mexico Open Meetings Act, NMSA 1978, Section 1015(1)(h)(7). Meetings subject to attorney-client privilege pertaining to the threatened or pending litigation in which the public body is or may become a participant. Darren Herrera versus City of Espanola case. Is there a motion?
Motion to go into executive session to discuss Darren Herrera versus City of Espanola.
Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Peggy Sue Martinez to enter into executive session, second by Councilor Annette Rodriguez. For the roll call, Ms. Garcia.
Mayor Pro Tem Peggy Sue Martinez.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilors Dennis Tim Salazar,
For the motion.
Justin Salazar Torres,
In favor.
Daniel J. Martinez is not here. Denise D. Benavides. Dorothy D. Valdez,
For the motion.
Aaron J. Salazar,
In favor.
Nanette D. Rodriguez.
For the motion.
Motion carries.
The time is 7:54. Recess into executive session.
Yes. Yes. ID and a single.
Appreciate that. You know, I mean, it's like, you don't stay long. Their backs. No, can't see it. Can't read lips. I guess I get to go home. Did you get to go home?
So are we gonna approve the settlement agreement? So are we gonna approve the settlement agreement? Yeah.
Insurance handles it by policy. We don't have a say.
Well, I have to sign the settlement agreement. This is what this is to do. Okay. The time is 8:19. I'm gonna reconvene into regular session. Roll call to exit out of.
No action was.
Oh, no action was taken in executive session, ladies and gentlemen. I need a
Motion said to have executive session.
motion by Mayor Pro Tem Peggy Sue Martinez to exit out of executive session. There,
Second.
by Counselor Benavides,
I'm left here hanging.
roll call.
Mayor Pro Tem Peggy Sue Martinez.
Absolutely.
Counselors Dennis Tim Salazar,
For the motion.
Justin Salazar Torres,
In favor of the motion.
Denise D. Benavides,
Favor.
Dorothy D. Valdez,
For the motion.
Aaron J. Salazar,
In favor.
Nanette D. Rodriguez.
For the motion.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We're gonna table action item 6A, discussing approving allowing the mayor to sign the settlement agreement for the case of Darren Herrera versus the city of Espanol. My recommendations to table.
Motion to table.
Motion by Counselor Justice Asa Torres to table, second by Counselor Denise Benavides. Roll call, Ms. Garcia.
Mayor Pro Tem. I'll come back to her. Counselors Dennis Tim Salazar,
For the motion.
Justin Salazar Torres,
In favor of the motion.
Denise D. Benavides, Dorothy D. Valdez,
For the motion.
Aaron J. Salazar,
Favor.
Nanette D. Rodriguez.
For the motion.
Motion carries.
The time is 8:20.